Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MA Climate and Society virtual information session. We're so thrilled that you're able to join us this evening. I'm just going to give it a couple minutes to allow additional participants to join the session. Again, I want to make sure that we allow some time for those of you from joining near and far to kind of begin the session with us. In addition, I just want to do a shameless audio check while we're waiting. I'd love to hear where everybody's joining us from. So I believe the chat function is disabled, but if you want to go ahead and type in the Q&A function where you are joining us from this evening, that would be phenomenal. I'm Alfred Ayub. I'm joining from New York City here in Manhattan. And joining me today is Damaris Diaz, our Assistant Director of Academic Enrollment. Damaris?
Hello.
Hello. Hudson Valley, welcome, Kelly. Oh, that's great, Reed. Claremont. Delhi, India. Wow, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. Minneapolis, phenomenal. Pomona, California. LA, welcome. Sarah's in Pomona. Blacksburg, Virginia. Go Virginia Tech. Costa Rica. I wish I was in Costa Rica right now. Thomas, I'm so glad you could join. That's great. Austin, Texas. We love Austin and the Bats. Rochester, New York. Chile, welcome, welcome. This is great. Thank you, guys. Wonderful. So one thing I'll go ahead and no, and I'm just going to give it one more minute. While we're waiting. Brooklyn, awesome, Drew. Welcome. Bangkok, Queens. Wow, this is such I love that everybody is from distant places. Davidson College in North Carolina. Paris, welcome. We had an open house recently with somebody from Paris that joined on October 27th, which is great. Holland, Michigan, Los Angeles, the Bronx. That's awesome. I always like to, Michiganders, I love that you guys always use the palm of your hand to describe where you're located in Michigan. I think that's always like a kind of a fun fact. All right, excellent. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get started. And I will say our, one moment. Just one moment, guys. In about 1 minute, I'm going to hit the record button, in fact. But just one moment. Excellent. Okay, and I am going to record the session, I promise. So we'll make sure that that's done. And I'm going to go ahead and hit record now. And forgive me, guys, it appears that our guest speaker is unable to join us this evening, but I will make sure that you have a recording from previous sessions of other recent alumni. So my apologies for that. So let me go ahead and begin the recording now. All right, so again, welcome everybody to our MA in Climate and Society virtual information session. My name is Alfred Ayub. I work in admissions here at Columbia Climate School, and joining me today is Damaris Diaz, who's going to be helping with the Q&A. She's our Assistant Director of Academic Enrollment. In terms of the agenda today, I'm going to go ahead and give you kind of a broad overview of Columbia Climate School. I'm also going to touch on our student profile, so the current student learning community. We're also going to go ahead and detail the overall curriculum and kind of deep dive in what's called the climate curriculum or the climate core curriculum. And then I'm going to touch on the summer internships and capstones, professional development opportunities, of course, financial aid, and then finally the application process. Something else I just want to note is we are going to be hosting, there's a lot of events going on right now in the world of admissions at the Climate School. So next week, we are going to be hosting an application tips and strategy session featuring 5 current students in the MA Climate and Society program, and they are going to be serving on a student panel. So kind of answering how they approach the statement of purpose, how they approach accessing letters of recommendation. So definitely, if you have not already registered for the application tips and strategies panel, definitely do so. And Damaris, if you'd be so kind to feel free to hyperlink that as well in the chat or in the Q&A for our participants to register if they haven't already. So in terms of Columbia University's, and this specifically Columbia Climate School, I always like to give a little bit of historical context as it relates to the Climate School. But first and foremost, the Columbia University is a global leader, specifically in climate and sustainability education, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. Interestingly, not many people know that we actually designed an undergraduate major back when we were the Earth Institute, but we're most known for our graduate level education. Education programs at the Climate School provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for future climate leaders to work with businesses, communities, governments, and civil society to address the climate crisis. In terms of our history, what I always like to note, when you say Columbia University, you're referencing the 5th oldest institution here in the United States, the oldest in the state of New York. But something else I always like to note is when you say the term Columbia University, think of it as an umbrella. And underneath that umbrella is over 20 distinct professional graduate schools. Within those 20 distinct graduate school programs, Columbia Climate School is the newest. It was announced in 2020 and launched in 2021, and currently the only degree program by which we administer the degree and confer the degree, meaning when you graduate with your diploma, you're getting a Columbia University Climate School diploma, is the MA in Climate and Society program. But whenever I talk about the newness of this school, it does a disservice to our history because we actually were birthed out of 2 very long-standing organizations. First is Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. Patrick, you've made it! Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, I'm so happy. All right. The one, the only Patrick Beckley's here. I'm going to go back. I'll just finish up the history, and then you guys are going to be hearing from Patrick, which is awesome. I'm so glad you're here, Patrick. Welcome, welcome. So just really quick, I'll go over, because Patrick's the person of the hour. This is the person you want to hear from, the person that graduated from the program. So stay tuned, everybody. This is phenomenal. I'm so glad to see you, Patrick. So in terms of the history of it, it began with Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which existed for over 70 years at Columbia University. It's ranked the #1 scientific campus in the earth and environmental sciences. There are many different research centers based at Lamont. For example, El Nino weather patterns were literally kind of data modeled at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. One of our Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory faculty was the first to coin the term global warming in the 1970s. So Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory is really the tip of the spear in earth and environmental sciences, specifically at Columbia University. And then in addition to Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, we have the Earth Institute, which is the largest research center within Columbia University itself. And it brings over 750 environmental scientists, policy managers, lawyers, and engineers working on issues of sustainable development and environmental management. And then from Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is that 189-acre campus photographed on the bottom left, and of course, Columbia University's, the Earth Institute, from these 2 pillars, essentially Columbia Climate School was birthed. So it's definitely not a school that was developed out of thin air by any means. It has a very, very strong foundation within Columbia University. But before I continue in terms of the presentation, I want to go ahead and welcome our guest speaker, Patrick Beckley. Patrick is an environmental engineer with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, better known as the EPA, and brings over 8 years of experience as a technical lead on chemical risk management and environmental justice strategy. Patrick earned a BS in chemical engineering from Howard University and is a recent graduate of the MA in Climate and Society program. In fact, Patrick just graduated in 2023. In his spare time, he builds innovative climate tech prototypes that support community adaptation action, like urban forestry. So thank you so much, Patrick, for joining the virtual session. We're so appreciative. I'm going to be weaving Patrick in kind of throughout the presentation this evening. But Patrick, if you don't mind sharing with us, what's your climate story? What kind of drew you to this program? What drew you to the work at the EPA? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, first, Alfred, thanks for stalling while I was figuring out how to get on the panel side because I was already on the webinar side, but I definitely remember being on that side last year or the year before while I was applying to the program, and you were really a great help. So I just want to say thanks again. But for my climate story, yeah, I was born in Freetown, Sierra Leone in West Africa. And it's a coastal city. It's a beautiful city. It has like very, I mean, I love where I'm from, just like everybody else. But there's also a lot of environmental impacts that happen in that area. But these are things that you don't think about while you're growing up. You're just kind of living your life. So in the 90s, Sierra Leone had a civil war where it was pretty known globally. Like you may have heard like the Blood Diamond movie or things like that. That's how it kind of got to the outside world, but in reality, it was a very scary situation, which also led to a lot of environmental degradation. And I guess I'll kind of weave that through my story. But I ended up moving to Nairobi, Kenya, which is on the other coast of Africa, which is a completely different culturally, different landscapes, different altitudes, but then you also start to see other environmental issues that are happening in another part of the world. And then ended up moving to this right outside of DC in Virginia, and grew up in that area. So just kind of having like all these different city perspectives of, different physical places, but then also you add on social, economic, and all these other factors. Having to kind of wrap my head around these things. Climate and environment was probably the best way to really touch on all these different issues that I was noticing just through my own personal viewpoint of existing. So being an engineer, I definitely always want to solve problems, like kind of starting from the time in Sierra Leone to Kenya to the DMV. But then falling into wanting to go to the climate school was really more so an experience of the first school that I noticed that actually brought together all of these different things that I thought about, whether it be cultural aspects, whether it be policy aspects, whether it be the technical engineering aspects, whether it would be social aspects that you may not think weave into the difference between it being able to pass international policy or being able to pass to be able to have a prototype that works, but then figuring out how that fits into the current laws and fits into the current infrastructure of a country or whatever the case is. Like all these different factors, the climate school is the best opportunity to really touch on all these different experiences and weave them into a better package that I was able to use. So I'm just really excited to get to talk to you all, and looking forward to today. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate it. And like I said, Patrick's going to touch on various aspects of the program through his lens. We're going to be hearing from Patrick again on the core, his feelings on the climate core. We're also going to hear from him on his kind of elective journey. So stay tuned, everyone. Patrick is definitely coming back. In terms of just going into now the MA Climate and Society program, we touched on Columbia Climate School and its history, but the MA in Climate and Society program is another kind of program that you would think is brand new, but it actually has been around since 2005, originally within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and has since migrated now to Columbia Climate School. So it's really to train students to understand and address the impacts of climate variability and change on society and the environment. We want you to understand and analyze, and most importantly, communicate climate information. It takes a very interdisciplinary approach to addressing the climate crisis. We have students that are coming to this program with a very kind of deliberate mission in mind, kind of thinking through applying climate to a very specific lens. Maybe it's public health, maybe it's climate policy, maybe it's climate and sustainability management. And then we have some students that come into this program that are extremely exploratory, and they kind of decide to take a potpourri of elective courses throughout their journey, which we'll definitely talk about. Something else that we were very, very proud of is the idea of not only are you coming to Columbia Climate School for our great faculty and the wonderful resources available as a Columbia University student in general, but you're also coming to learn from one another. We definitely pride ourselves on developing a very diverse cohort of learners. And in fact, Damaris, if you wouldn't mind also sharing our MA Climate and Society, specifically the current student directory, so you can see the 100 plus current students that are enrolled in the program. In these current students, there's specifically about 40% of our incoming class are international. 23 countries of citizenship are represented within the cohort that just started in fall 2023. We're very proud of that. We also represent 18 states among our domestic students, and approximately 15% of the incoming class are the first in their family to attend college. We would classify those as first-generation college students. And then finally, the average age in the cohort is 26 years old. Another question that frequently comes up among prospective students is education backgrounds. Is what do students typically study? And one thing I want to just note, it would be a huge misconception to think that all the students coming into this program are looking to go on to become climate scientists. We've seen a significant number over the years, a ratio, in fact, where they've become the majority of students with specifically social science backgrounds. And you can see that in that lower right pie chart entering our program. And then about 1/3 of the remaining learners come from more classic STEM backgrounds, such as Patrick, who has an engineering undergraduate degree. In terms of the curriculum itself and the program timeline, this program has always been designed to be a full-time program completed within 1 year. Although I will say, for anybody that's joining us today that might be thinking of part-time, we have recently launched a part-time path. In fact, it's funny, Patrick, I remember when you and I first spoke, you were thinking about part-time. Now we have it. So you finished it in the year, but we have, but we just recently developed. I know Patrick might be like, I wish I had that option, but we recently developed a 1 year, or forgive me, a 2-year part-time path, and I'll talk about that soon. But in this 1 year interdisciplinary program, you're seeing a 3-semester timeline. It always begins in the fall, continues in the spring, and in the summer, we would classify this as transforming concepts into practice. It's taking everything that you learned in the program and applying it either in an internship opportunity or alternatively a capstone where you're working with a live client organization and a team. So in the fall semester, you begin your climate core with a dynamics course, dynamics of climate variability and change. And we consider this truly a foundation for all of our students looking to go into the climate space. It's critical for you, regardless of your education background or the industries that you hope to work in. If it is with a climate lens, you have to be able to understand the nature and the scientific nature, that is, of the climate crisis. So there's going to be physics involved in this course. But really the spirit of this, especially for students, let's say you're joining us and your undergraduate major was anthropology or economics, political science. If somebody stops you on the street and says, do you believe in climate change? And you answer yes, and then their follow-up question is, why do you believe in it? We want to ensure that you're able to authentically answer the question, why? Why do you believe in climate change? So this should give you a very broad overview of the scientific nature of the climate crisis. And then we have two courses that complement one another in the fall, and we consider these the two kind of pillars in addressing the crisis. That's going to be climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. This has been an evolution in the climate core. So climate change mitigation is being taught by Dr. Melissa Lott, who's the director of the Center for Global Energy Policy here at Columbia University. She has a phenomenal podcast called The Big Switch. I just want to know I listened to it. It's actually phenomenal. And Damaris, if you don't mind plugging that as well. It talks about the most recent episodes have been talking about Europe's a more aggressive pivot to green energy in light of the war in Ukraine and Russia. And then we have a climate change adaptation course taught by Dr. Lisa Dale, who has a very strong sustainable development background. In fact, she is the director of the undergraduate major in sustainable development, and a lot of her research that she conducts is in Rwanda. And then in the spring semester, we have quantitative methods for climate applications, and this course uses R specifically to manipulate large climate data sets. And then finally, there's an applications course in climate and society. And this is largely a seminar style class, but I'm going to pause there before I continue on. I'd love to hear, Patrick, what was I know that Patrick, interestingly, just graduated from the program, and the cadence of his climate course, so to speak, was slightly different, but just out of curiosity, is there a specific course that stands out that you really appreciated or really enjoyed within the climate core?
Yeah, it's really hard to say just one, honestly. I really enjoyed like the core classes and then the electives. I think one thing I would say to everyone on the call is just like take advantage of the resources that you have through the climate school specifically, but then through Columbia's network widely as well. From my core classes, it's interesting because the class that we did our climate dynamics. It was probably one of my favorite classes, just really being able to have that analytical understanding of climatology and like really being able to explain the reasons why we're noticing certain things within the Earth system. Just looking at it really from like that, like a nerdy engineering level. But then there were so many other classes that I took that I really enjoyed from the elective side where very different. So I took a climate technology class, which was a newer class offered with the engineering school and the business school that really focused on climate technology and innovation, looking at ways that we could use not just policy, but business as a way to create climate solutions. So those are just like two different ways to look at the interdisciplinary nature of the course.
Excellent, excellent. And you'll see here, it's a 34 credit hour program. And you'll notice at the bottom of each of these columns, it says fall minimum 15 credits, spring minimum 13 credits. These are recommendations. What's I think really interesting about the MA Climate and Society program is that we follow oh my goodness, all of a sudden my mind drew a blank, but we follow you can take up to 20 credit hours, forgive me, each semester and be charged essentially the same tuition rate. So if you took 15 credits or if you took 18 credits, for example, your tuition is unchanged. So in terms of, I just out of curiosity, Patrick, did you follow this kind of guideline or did you take additional courses? I'm just curious. Some students did. Some students
I took additional courses.
How many?
I definitely took
advantage. Now I'm too curious. But
I ended up with I took 3 summer classes. So
excellent.
I ended up, that pretty much put me over for the year.
Yeah. So meaning, for example, Patrick saying, "Hey, listen, in addition to my internship or capstone, for example, I took 3 additional courses." You can take up to 20 credits in the summer. Something else I just want to note, what's interesting about the summer is let's say you get an internship and it's outside the New York metro area. If you're not interested in taking courses, but strictly taking doing the internship, for example, one of my colleagues, Gerald Contiago, who heads our career development office, Gerald always references a student that went to Berlin, for example, And that's not a problem. That final summer semester, you could potentially be outside the New York metro area. So I'll just note that as well. I'll briefly highlight and feel free if you do have questions about part-time, feel free to type it in the chat, but we do now have a part-time option where essentially we take this 1-year timeline and we stretch it out to 2 years. We want to be very deliberate in noting that we do not offer this as an evening only program. So just note that our part-time option, you will likely have day classes, as that's when a lot of our climate core courses run. But students enrolling in the part-time program generally include one or more of the following profiles. So this would be in your admissions application. When you do go ahead and move forward with submitting an application, there will be a question, yes or no, do you wish to enroll part-time? There's an added layer of understanding why you want to enroll part-time. So it's not open to everybody. It's really for people who demonstrated significant work experience in climate change or climate adjacent space, working professionals currently in any space that can reasonably assert that they can readily apply the MA in Climate and Society program to their current work, or to easily transition to climate or a related field where they can apply the program to that profession. So again, let's say you're saying, Alfred, I'm a journalist right now, and I'm covering finance, but I've been increasingly getting stories in climate finance, and I want to have a better understanding of the climate crisis in general. The part-time program could be a great fit for you. You could directly apply what you're learning into your practice as a journalist, for example. That's a very specific example. Again, just noting though that we have an expectation that you would likely be a working professional to request a part-time standing. I also want to note that as the climate school continues to grow and continues to evolve in terms of our programming and course offerings, our electives are only continuing to increase in options. So for example, we have a climate mobility elective, climate change decision making. In Patrick's final semester, I recall there was a disaster risk management online course as an elective option. There was also environmental justice, a legal framework for advocacy. We've included now 3 different climate and environmental justice electives, as we've heard that persistently among our current students as a topic that they wish to be woven throughout the program. So we've only added electives in that area, as we also recognize that's critical. But in addition to our own electives, we also, I think something that draws a lot of student interest is the idea of the cross-registration journey, quite frankly. And in fact, Patrick hinted at it earlier, but it's the idea that you're able to cross-register in any of our graduate school programs, so long as they are graduate school, professional school, so as long as they allow for cross-registration. So we have students that enroll in the School of International and Public Affairs, in the Mailman School of Public Health, Columbia Law School, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. In fact, Patrick, I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you do the travel course to Columbia?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Can you talk about, okay, now, all right, let me, I'll just really quick for myself, I'll just say we have a lot of students that cross-register, and the elective journey is really meant to be dynamic. And again, when I mentioned earlier in the presentation was the idea of some of you are going to be very exploratory. I'm sure Patrick can discuss students in his own cohort that were very much like that. And then some of you are going to be very direct. You're going to be like, listen, my lens is climate and public health. I want to take a bunch of public health courses for my elective journey because that's where I am. So I'm going to put a pause though, because that's the number one question I often get is what do students take for electives in addition to the opportunities within the climate school? Patrick, I'd love to hear, tell me about your electives and also tell me about the Columbia travel course, the nature of that class.
No, definitely. I mean, I think from my lens, it was really about the taking advantage of the interdisciplinary approach. Already having like a technical background, kind of really wanting to understand how this connects to other areas. So an example was it was an environmental justice slash urban planning class where we took it with GSAP. So it's the School of Graduate Architectural Design, as well as the climate school. And we pretty much just work on a very specific project in Cartagena, Colombia. And other groups had other areas to work on, looking at climate resilience, looking at a real life project. We got to go to Colombia for a week as well. I mean, I don't know, like that's as good as school could get in terms of experiential learning. So for me, my electives, like I mentioned, I try to take electives that were integrated within other schools because you have so much, you get to learn so much, like just learning from students in the School of Design, learning from students in other schools, but then also bringing the information that we brought from the climate school because a lot of students throughout Columbia in general were just like, hey, what are you guys learning in the climate school? Like, we're really interested to know. And it was a great opportunity to be able to like bridge that gap, which was something that was important for me.
Excellent. And then how did you find the cross? I know cross registration can be tricky because you have to wait, right, Patrick? Like you don't, for example, the climate school electives, you guys are going to get a chance to register very early in the process, but because of the nature of the cross registration, meaning priority is always given to the students housed within those given professional schools. How did you find it though, Patrick? Was it feasible? Like, did you find it feasible? Did you find it still rewarding?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think this is part it's part of like the learning experience, just like really going after what you want. And like identifying what you want first. So there's a tool called Virgil that kind of allows you to look at all the different courses throughout Columbia. You could kind of take a look at which classes are already full, and it's going to be a hard chance to get into those, but maybe there might be one space left. Like in some of the classes I took, there was literally one space left. I got to be that one extra space, and then you work with people within the climate school office, and they'll be able to help you to get you into any of the class if it permits. You just kind of have to look at the requirements, so you may have to go to that school's website, but there's a lot of helpful people along, whether it's classmates or staff that are able to help you to figure out how to navigate into the course. And usually, unless there's like a capacity reason or they're just not allowing students, if they're able to take students, then they probably will.
Excellent. Yeah, and the one other thing before we cap off the elective conversation, I'll just briefly mention is that I always tell prospective students, especially, the number one reason that you're coming to Columbia's MA Climate and Society is for the Climate Core. That should be your driving thrust. That should be your motivation. The electives is kind of the icing on the cake, right? The electives are going to be an opportunity for you to explore deeper in a specific subject or get a broader view in a specific professional school with that climate lens. But I always like to emphasize that the climate core is a critical component of the degree program. Something else it's a new innovation, and in fact, it was just launched this year, is specifically two areas of specialization. So we received feedback from recent graduating cohorts that many students wanted an opportunity to dive deeper in a specific subject area, for example, wanted a slightly more curated list in their elective journey. So fun fact, Patrick, the study abroad Columbia trip inspired this climate in the built environment specialization. So we partnered in an official capacity with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, specifically to offer climate in the built environment specialization. And then we also have a second specialization, specifically disaster risk management, which is in partnership with the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. I want to just stress that specializations are completely optional, especially in the admissions application process. If you select a specialization or if you don't select a specialization, it does not impact your admissions decision or weigh on your admissions decision. But I just want to also note that we are going to be hosting a specialization information session on November 30th. And Damaris, if I could ask you to also include that info session link. If any of you are intrigued by these specialization opportunities, feel free to attend that. They're going to be, I'm going to be moderating the discussion with Associate Dean Danielle Smaller in the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, and then Professor Jeffrey Schleglemelch, who's also the director of the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. So if you're interested in the specializations, feel free to register for that November 30th virtual session. We'll go into great detail on those. So then we have our summer, which is either the internship or the consulting capstone. The internship has been the most popular option. It's always been the historic option for quite a few of our students. And they perform internships, as I mentioned, all over the tri-state area in the world, really. we've had students at the New York Mayor's Office, the World Food Program, the United Nations, and then also the International Research Institute for Climate and Society. That's a major research center based at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. And then we have the Capstone Workshop, which was actually launched in 2020. And we worked with a variety of organizations. My personal favorite we have listed there is WFLA TV and Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. I'm from the Tampa Bay area, and WFLA is an affiliate station down there. So they assess Tampa Bay area's vulnerability compared to other cities along the West Coast to glean an explanation specifically surrounding hurricanes and climate conditions. But let me pause there. I'm just out of curiosity. And Patrick, I should have asked you before. I didn't realize. I was like, what did Patrick do? What was your summer like? Did you do the internship or the capstone or both? I know some students end up doing both.
Yeah, so pretty much I did the internship class, and then I also took classes on top of that. So I worked with the Environment Protection Agency, but during the summer specifically, I worked specifically towards like the goals that we set throughout the class. And then by the end of the school year, I actually ended up getting a new role within the EPA. So now
Awesome.
I'm a congressional liaison, which is a whole different thing from engineering. But yeah, a lot of that came from the work that I was doing within the climate school.
Within the internship. That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And I mentioned briefly, we do have some students in the program that ultimately can't decide. What we do is we offer up around 8 different capstone projects, and then we ask students to select, I believe, their top 2, and then that's how you're ultimately selected for which capstone you'll be placed in if you decide to do a capstone. And we do have a number of students that ultimately wish to do both a capstone as well as an internship. If that is the case, if you have the bandwidth for that, the capstone would be what would count toward the 6 credits of your summer. So just noting, capstone would be the 6 credits if you decided to do both a capstone as well as an internship. I also want to highlight our career resources and professional development opportunities within Columbia Climate School. We do have a dedicated career placement officer for all of our MA Climate and Society students. They're going to work with you from day one in the fall semester to understand a little bit more about your goals and ambitions for that summer. Also, kind of what industries you're hoping to target postgraduate degree or while you're in the degree program. As part of that, our career placement officer hosts a variety of employer info sessions. We also have been hosting an all Ivy environmental and sustainable development career fair for over 10 years. We bring 90 plus employers to campus, and we invite all students from the Ivy League to descend upon Morningside Heights and participate in both a career fair and a variety of professional development workshops. These last 2 years that had been online, but I'm super excited to note that it's going to be an on-campus career fair this coming February 2024. We also have an exclusive job list and alumni directory for Columbia Climate School, MA Climate and Society, along with our partner programs in the sustainability programs and environmental science and policy program. We also have an Earth Institute internship program. And then finally, I think it's a really dynamic event. Patrick, I don't know, did you get a chance to participate in the sustainability skills seminars last year? It was okay. It was very interesting. One of the skill seminars was like literally a career reception they held at the Columbia Club. It just happened this about a week ago, last Friday, where they invited 30 different sustainability professionals, many of them alumni, and students were given kind of this opportunity to go around these roundtables and hear from them, whether they work in climate communication or sustainability consulting or climate finance, and hear kind of about their work and their practice. In terms of our graduates, so the class of 2022, we're still collecting data from the class of 2023, but the class of 2022, about 40% of our students went on to the private sector, which we're very interested in this figure because historically the program typically placed around 15% in the private sector. We attribute this jump to the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed under President Biden. Obviously the billions of dollars now that are being dedicated towards clean energy. It's led to a lot of opportunities for our students. So as I mentioned earlier, about 40% of our students are in the the private sector, about 16% in the public sector, similar to Patrick's role, and then about 30% in non-governmental organizations, and then finally 15% in academia. In terms of the types of roles our students, recent ones, a sustainability insight analyst at McKinsey, a geospatial risk analyst at UNICEF, a climate data science officer within Michigan state government. We've had students, in fact, at the World Bank, in Patrick's cohort, at the Environmental Protection Agency. Boston Consulting has hired some recent students. The list goes on. It's a very interdisciplinary program as we keep leaning into that, and the outcomes can be considered as such as well. There's no cookie cut outcome within the MA Climate and Society program, as we strongly believe in order to address the climate crisis, we need students embedded within many industries, within many sectors. But here's just a slightly longer list of where our students have gone on to. And in the employer section of the MA Climate and Society program, I always like to stress that the employer section includes a outcomes chart that we highlight for the class of 2022. So if you said, okay, I'm going to click on the pie chart and the NGO specifically, you'll get a list of organizations and job titles our students secured specifically for the class of 2022. I'm now going to touch on financial aid. So first and foremost, we have fellowships. Within those fellowships, the first bucket I want to touch on are climate and society fellowships. About 50% of our incoming class for the fall 2023 received a climate and society fellowship. I'm very happy that we were able to increase that ratio, and I'm hoping we can continue increasing that ratio for our incoming fall 2024 cohort. In terms of climate and society fellowships, you're automatically considered for them. They're merit-based. And in terms of when you are notified, you're notified at the time of admission. So they would be within your acceptance letter, and they range anywhere from $10,000 upwards to $35,000 for a climate and society fellowship. Another opportunity that our students are quite eager to pursue are what's called departmental research assistantships. These are paid assistantships at $6,000 in terms of funding, with $3,000 for your fall semester work and $3,000 for the spring semester work. But I want to be transparent about this. Only about 30 departmental research assistantships are available. So for example, in Patrick's cohort, I would say around 70 students applied for departmental research assistantships, and there was only 30 opportunities available. Patrick, out of curiosity, did you apply for one? Or I know that you ended up working in the provost's office, correct? Or forgive me, what were you, did you have a DRA? I should ask.
Yeah, I ended up working with Barnard Sustainability Office.
Excellent. And was that a departmental research assistantship?
Yeah, it was.
Excellent, excellent. So actually, I should have known that before doing this call. Patrick did a departmental research assistantship, which is great. These opportunities become available after a student's admitted and actually after you've committed to the program. So we advertise them in the month of August, and you'll learn of your placement in the month of September. And then, of course, there's external fellowships. I want to stress that you should begin researching external fellowships today. The Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, which is the office that administers our financial aid, they have a great website that lists external fellowship directories, and I would recommend going ahead and start researching that now. In fact, Damaris, if you don't mind sharing that in the chat box as well, the external fellowships directory website. I always recommend start researching those opportunities now. I always hate during our spring cycle. So for example, you get that acceptance letter in March, and then you're trying to figure out how to pay for it. Oftentimes external fellowships deadlines have already passed by then. So now is the time to start reviewing and applying for those opportunities. And then the second bucket would be federal and private loans. And I do want to note that many of our students do utilize federal and private loans to help fund their degree program. If you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, you do have an option of federal loans and private loans to help supplement. And then for those of you joining us that might be international, or you plan on enrolling in the program on an F1 student visa, there are private loans available. It's a little bit more restrictive. There's not as many options, but I will say the two private loan organizations many of our international students work with are Empower and Prodigy Finance. Both of those institutions do not require a US cosigner. So it's something else to kind of do a little bit more research on. Now I'm going to talk about the Climate and Society application process. It is an online application. The application for fall 2024 is live. I always recommend, there's no reason why any of you guys joining the call today, if you're interested in fall 24, shouldn't go ahead and take advantage and start filling one out, or start seeing, log in and create a portal to start seeing the questions that are going to be asked of you. In the online application, you'll upload your resume, 2 letters of references. One must be an academic recommendation letter if you've been enrolled within the last 5 years. Now, if you're joining us today and you say, Alfred, I graduated 10 years ago, do I need an academic recommendation letter? The answer is no. It could be 2 professional recommendations. One must be academic if you've been enrolled in school within the last 5 years. We also ask for your unofficial college transcripts. So, for example, if you said, Alfred, I graduated from Syracuse University in undergrad, and then I also attended Rutgers University for my master's degree, we would need both of those unofficial transcripts uploaded to the online application portal. You don't need to send us official transcripts for admissions decisions. You would simply upload unofficial transcripts to the application portal. Also, for those of you joining us, if English is not your first language, and if English was not the sole language of instruction in your undergraduate university, we would need an English language test. So either a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a Duolingo English test. And for those tests, we do have minimums because English is the language of instruction within Columbia University. We would need to see that you have a strong English foundation. So the TOEFL, we are looking for a 100 minimum. For the IELTS, we're looking for a 7.5, and then for the Duolingo English test, we're looking for a 135. Finally, the statement of purpose. This is a critical component of the admissions application, and it's really your opportunity to share with us kind of your voice, your goals, your motivations. Why are you interested in studying climate? And so often students will email me and say, Alfred, how do I set myself apart from other candidates? What is the admissions committee looking for? Well, something that the committee is always seeking is understanding what value or what perspective you will bring to our cohort. What perspective will you bring to the learning environment? And so the Climate and Society Statement of Purpose is going to give you an opportunity to share that perspective. So it's a robust prompt. I think that's the most diplomatic way I can say or put it, but it says, please share the key experiences that have contributed to your commitment to work on climate change issues. In addition, what are your academic and professional goals? And what knowledge and skills are you hoping to develop through enrollment in Columbia Climate School? Finally, why is enrollment in Climate and Society critical in helping you achieve your goals? And which Climate and Society core course are you most excited to complete? So a big hint here, remember I said earlier in the session, remember the elective journey is exciting. The elective journey allows you to hone deeper in a specific subject area that you're hoping to enhance a skill in. But why are you truly here? It's for the climate core. So which climate core course are you most excited to complete? Maybe it's climate mitigation. Perhaps it's the dynamics course. Maybe you strongly believe in climate adaptation as a means to further address how to cope with climate variability and change. Phenomenal. Address that. Share it in your statement of purpose. In terms of the application deadlines, our priority deadline is January 15th, 2024. Everybody joining the call today, when are you applying for the MA Climate and Society? January 15th, 2024. I just want to encourage that. Everybody should be applying by the priority deadline. Take advantage of that, especially if you're interested in Climate and Society fellowships. Your decisions will also get released by March. It gives you just more time for planning. And then the final deadline, if you decide to go with the final deadlines, March 1st, 2024. Let me now pause there and open to Q&A, and I'm going to ask that we do questions first for Patrick. So I really want to encourage, because Patrick agreed to an hour with us, which I'm so thankful. But in that case, I want to dedicate, if you have any questions for Patrick specifically. So let's go ahead and open up the Q&A. Do not be shy. Now is the time to go ahead and ask questions. Damaris, do you mind letting us know, is there any Patrick questions specific?
Yeah, don't be shy. Just ask. I was in the same position, trust me.
So I will start with, I'll go ahead and, oh, I see, hold on, are there more questions coming in? No, okay, I got excited about the chat. So I'll go ahead and start at the very least. Are there any specific prerequisite classes that need to be taken prior to submitting the application? Reed, that's an excellent question. So are there prerequisites? The answer is there are not prerequisites. One thing that a lot of students, especially with students with a background in the social science, they get a little intimidated when I talk about the dynamics course or the quantitative methods class. Hey, Alfred, I haven't been exposed to physics since high school. One thing I always like to note is that our admissions committee, number one, would only be enrolling students that we feel have the necessary foundation to succeed at Columbia University. But the other element is we do offer a math boot camp for the MA Climate and Society admitted students. This is a free math boot camp, in fact. So that's something that would become available to you online. Patrick, I know it's been some time. Do you recall the math boot camp? Do you remember? Patrick might not be the best example because Patrick's an engineer. So
Yeah.
Patrick wasn't worried about that one. But I promise you, the majority of our students have social science background. So I don't want anybody being intimidated. Let's see here. For Patrick, how do you feel going to Columbia helped you with finding or feeling qualified for your current job? How do you, that's actually a great question. Can you share with us about that? How did it prepare you? I know you said you've now pivoted in the EPA to a very different role. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, going to Columbia only helped in terms of my own personal ability to be able to do work, but then also my credibility. So how it's viewed by employers, etc. Having the engineering background, it was more so like obviously I did environmental engineering work with the US EPA, but the climate school degree, which kind of had courses in New York City climate policy and design, etc., and human design thinking, all these different types of things help um, show show how well-rounded my experience was, and then also like made me a great candidate for a congressional job, which kind of is a very huge pivot from what I would be doing as an engineer. Working a lot more with people, communication, a lot of things that you learn in the climate school. So I would say it definitely helped in terms of making me a better candidate for the job market.
Excellent. Another question asked is, what's your biggest gain from taking classes, doing projects from this program? Anything that helped you in the process of build your, maybe that might be a little bit of a saying, but is there anything that comes to mind that you're like, you know what, this skill set was really important for me? Or, you know, I got a lot of that R class, for example. I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think one of the main things is just like there's so many different factors that you're kind of calculating. You live in New York City, you're going to class at Columbia, you have your classmates, you have your coursework, you have your life, you have all these different things to factor. And it was a really great opportunity for me to really identify what was important to me, like going after those things that are important to me, and like getting the benefit out of it. So, for example, I'm being really into climate technology. There were different boot camps or competitions, like startup competition, pitch competitions that I was able to take advantage of just because I'm a Columbia student, and it was a great opportunity. Like I saw a question about like return on investment, but these
Yes.
were experiences to be able to really um, meet leaders in the sciences and business and law that are really able to help move forward what I'm working on that I probably couldn't have access to if I didn't go to school there. So
Thanks, Patrick. And then Another question, Maurizio asked a great question, and I should note, guys, Patrick is a unique profile in that Patrick previously worked at the EPA and then pivoted into a new role within the EPA. So I want to just make sure to avoid any confusion. But Maurizio still asks a great question: did you know what field you wanted to get into after graduating from climate school before applying? So Patrick, did you know, like, I'm definitely sticking with the EPA, I'm sticking in this? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean it was an opportunity to explore what was out there. I mean, the EPA was kind of like my dream job in high school, and there's so many different paths within the government, but it was also an opportunity to see what was out there in the private sector, what's out there in the public sector, and really, like I mentioned, having looking from a startup lens, like this was a really great opportunity to learn and whatever you're learning and build a network. So with the network and with what I've learned, being able to apply that into whether that's a business case or whether that's just information that you can use for my current role. So it was just benefits all around.
Great. And then another question for, I love this, guys. You took it seriously when I said now's the time to ask Patrick questions. So for Patrick, did the 1 year timeline feel too short? This is a great question. And would you have preferred a 2 year timeline? Because I know, I'll just say this before Patrick speaks, a lot of our competing programs are 2 year programs. And I'll say a reason why a lot of students appreciate the 1 year program is it's 1 year outside the job market. So that's a lot of students appreciate that. But on the flip side, we do get anxiety around students saying, is that enough time for me to take full advantage of everything that is Columbia? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter how well your time management is, there's no way you can take advantage
No.
of everything at Columbia in 1 year. And that's really just the truth of it. So that's kind of going back to like trying to maximize your experience and always knowing that even as much as you figure it out, there's something you're gonna miss. There's gonna be a conference you really wanted to go to, but you had a class. There's gonna be you had a GRA ship, so you couldn't make it to a class trip. These things are gonna happen, but the 1 year is just really you're going in with the mindset of like I'm gonna take advantage of this year and make the most out of it. Whether that's the relationships that you make, the friends that you make that will go past that year. But it does feel a lot faster when a lot of other students are within the go through 2 years of a program and they may know each other over a summer, et cetera, et cetera. But um, it's also like Alfred mentions a benefit because you're able to really um, identify like, hey, this is what I want. And if you're really interested, there's some people I knew from the class that went on to get PhDs or went on to continue their education. So if you really just wanted to do like a quick like 1 year and kind of see like what your appetite was for it, you'd be able to extend and do something else, or you can just go straight into the work field.
Caitlin asks, I love this. It's a specific question, but she says, how was your experience with the urban planning course? Are there any other similar courses you took and enjoyed or anything you gained from living in New York City? I'm interested particularly in climate and cities. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
No, that's a really great question. And so I mean, kind of like when I started talking about like all these different places I've been, like the one of the best things I've learned is like climate, obviously, like this is kind of a duh, but like it's all about where you are, the place that you are, because climate is vocalized based off the different area that you are, different climatology, etc. So being in New York City, one of the leaders in climate policy as a city was a really great experience, especially in Upper Manhattan. We did a lot of work with like um, not just on campus but off campus. So working with like We Act for Environmental Justice and Peggy Shepard, or having different conferences, New York Climate Week within the city. I mean, can you imagine? You have like UN General Assemblies, and literally the whole world is coming to where you go to school just to talk about the topic that you're working on, but then also having experiences to travel to Columbia and other places, and go to Lamont campus. Like there's so many different things that you're able to tap into that, um, like I mentioned, like you're not going to be able to do it all, but if you're able to identify the things that are really important to you, then you're really able to maximize those things. And for that built environment course, like I mentioned, like uh, Yeah, like you don't know what you don't know. Like I had no idea. Like architects learn so differently from engineers, which was I thought we learned similarly, but it was completely different. And that was really helpful because you're able to kind of take those things into your own practice. So I would really advise like the core is really important for you to get your climate bases because you really don't want to go out into some of these other schools and not really because now they're going to be looking at you as the not necessarily the expert, but you're in the climate school, so you should like when they're like, oh, why should we XYZ? Like they're going to be asking you that, but then at the same time you're going to be learning from them as well. So um, after you kind of get your core, be able to branch out in some of these other courses and kind of see how different people learn, like some of the health and public services courses, like they think in a different way. We did some workshops with the School of Dentistry and School of Nursing. So like just different schools that like they're thinking about climate change in a completely different way. And this the same way the built environment is, the same way the business school is, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll keep that in mind.
That's great. And then just one more maybe for Patrick. Uh, how did you go, just out of curiosity, because I know you transitioned from DC to the New York City area, obviously. How was housing for you? I know that we're jumping ahead here thinking about housing, but housing is important. What were your,
Yeah.
yeah, how was it?
That should have been the first question.
Yeah.
So yeah, like think about moving to New York City. I mean, really, you have the opportunity for Columbia housing, and I would strongly advise that just because of it's subsidized for students, and it's like within close distance to campus, or they have bus routes or routes to get you to campus in a reasonable time. I actually tried the Columbia housing route, wasn't successful, so kind of just like the normal moving to a new city, looking for an apartment. I ended up living in Hamilton Heights, not too far, maybe 3 train stops from campus. So my living experience was good just because I mean it's only relative as good as living in New York could be because New York is a very interesting and entertaining place all the time. But it was a good experience for me because I was able to get to campus pretty relatively quick. Able to get back relatively quick, able to make it on campus if it's after class or have this study session, whatever the case is. Like it's really accessible. But I would definitely advise going through the Columbia um, resources first. And even if you don't get in the first time, I didn't get in the first time, and I probably could have been more persistent in trying to make sure that I was able to find something. So even if you aren't successful, I would monitor it if that's really important to you because later on in the semester, like or during the before the school year starts, there may be windows that you're able to get housing. So um, definitely, as soon as you get that acceptance letter, try to figure out like, okay, what am I going to do for housing for sure.
Excellent. And just to briefly answer, I want to be very transparent because, as Patrick noted, it is the preferred if you could get into Columbia housing. But this year we had 103 students join the fall 2023, and we only had 10 apartment style housing units available. So it's essentially a 10% chance, just to be fully transparent with everybody, on housing. And then Patrick, would you have time for one more if I threw it out there? I don't want to be too, yeah, I'll give you just one more. Just out of curiosity, and Patrick, uh, do students in your cohort like climate advocacy? I know a lot of students that were deeply interested in like We Act, for example. There's climate justice courses, but do you have any examples of students within your cohort?
Yeah, no, I mean, within my cohort, first they started a climate and society like advisory group, which was like new to the climate society program, and it's over 20 years of existence. So it just kind of shows like the kind of mindset our class had. I felt like we were quick to send a letter or say, hey, we want more out of this course, or we would like this to be done like this, or this is how we like our experience to be. So we were very hands-on with our education, which I would definitely advise for you all as well. But then on top of that, there were classmates that started different organizations that are still going on, from like whether it's climate communications, like the Earth Shiners, which is like a a monthly newsletter that goes out on different topics that are happening within New York City, but also from a wider range, and also just advocacy on different issues that come up. I mean, the thing is, you're at Columbia, but you're also in New York City, which things are happening literally every day. So it's almost as interchangeable as you are. You know, like you could weave it into your education, and just it's just part of the reality of living in New York City.
That's great. Well, I just want to say, for purposes of time, huge thank you, Patrick. I really, really, really appreciate your you sharing your perspective and just general advice. It turned into like a bit of an advice moment for a lot of prospective students. So thank you again for your time. And if we were in a live environment, I would ask everybody to give a round of applause. But we're in a virtual environment. So I just wanted to say, Patrick, huge thank you. And then for those of you joining us that do have still some outstanding questions, I will be sure that you're going to get a recording of this session, but also I'm going to be updating my one-on-one appointment calendar. There's going to be additional opportunities for us to schedule time and speak with one another on a one-on-one basis. I know a lot of you had a lot of questions pertaining to kind of degree outcomes. And one thing I just want to note is I mentioned earlier, we are very transparent about our placements. I will say the class of 2022 had a 96% placement rate within 5 months of graduation. We're not at the 5-month mark for Patrick's program yet, as technically the degrees are conferred in October, but we fully anticipate very strong rates as well. My one-on-one appointment calendar got highlighted specifically in the chat. And if there are any other questions, though, please feel free to email us at admissions@climate.columbia.edu. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining the session this evening, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.